On this Thursday night from Whitehorse, Arctic sovereignty and security under threat. The promise to protect the region as Canada tries to play catch-up.
It seems that everybody else around the world understands how important it is.
And what Canada's Inuit expect.
We want to be a part of this moment.
Soaring stocks and suspicions why the U.S. president is accused of insider trading. On the campaign trail, how the Liberals are pledging to get tougher on crime, and how the Conservative leader is brushing off plummeting poll numbers. And like a good neighbor, Yukon is there.
I forget that it's a whole different country.
What Alaskans are afraid of losing.
Global National with Dawna Friesen, reporting tonight from Whitehorse.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. We are overlooking the Yukon River on the traditional territory of the Kwanlin-Dun First Nation and the Tan-Quechan Council. We're here to talk about Arctic sovereignty and security. There's long been heightened awareness about those issues here. Now the rest of Canada is starting to pay attention. America is no longer a reliable partner. Russia is building up its military capability in the Arctic. China calls itself a near-Arctic nation now. All of it has thrust Canada's north into the geopolitical spotlight. It's hard to grasp the size of Canada's Arctic region. At 1.4 million square kilometres, it makes up 40% of Canada's landmass. And it's at an inflection point. The U.S. president is talking about annexing Canada and Greenland.
Mark, we need that for international security, not just security, international.
The Chinese are now using these routes. We know that the Russians are rearming. We know we have a lack of icebreakers.
Canada's political leaders are paying attention.
We must invest in Canada's north to defend our sovereignty.
All three major party leaders visited the Arctic earlier this year before the election campaign. The Liberals promised a $6 billion radar system, plus investments in military infrastructure and improvements to Inuit communities.
Canadians will take back control of their Arctic.
The Conservative leader promised a sophisticated military base in Iqaluit within 2 years. The NDP is also pledging more investments in the military and support for Arctic communities. But the fact is, the U.S. has a far more robust military capability in the Arctic, and Canada has always counted on it, until now.
If it's a plan for outright annexation, or if it's to turn us into this vassal state, we are still left with a process. How do we, as a country that has neglected its defense for so long, how do we do any form of meaningful planning when it comes to meeting these threats in the Arctic?
For Inuit people whose homeland is the Arctic, the threat is existential.
We've been colonized. We also have seen our homeland militarized. Defense bases were built. Our lives were upended. And that was just a consequence of the Cold War and the end of World War II. Now we're in a very different time. We either own outright or co-manage 40% of Canada's landmass and 72% of its coastline. We are proud Canadians, and we want to be a part of this moment, but we also demand the recognition and respect that comes along with that.
Under international law, no one owns the North Pole and the oceans around it, but Russia has planted a titanium flag on the seabed there. And competing territorial claims persist, including over the legendary Northwest Passage, which Canada claims. As sea ice melts, it would provide a shortcut for shipping between Europe and Asia and make access to mining and drilling for oil and gas easier. And when it comes to military might, Russia wins. Since 2005, it's been expanding its military capability, reopening multiple Soviet-era naval and air bases in the Arctic, building nuclear power icebreakers and nuclear submarines armed with ballistic missiles. Russian fighter jets often test Western limits. This one flew dangerously close to a NORAD jet on patrol in Alaska. China wants in too. It claims to be a near-Arctic nation and is working closely with Russia.
This is an election where big ideas are brought to the table, especially in relation to housing and infrastructure, and I hope the same can be said for the Arctic.
I'll speak with Yukon's premier a little later about why he thinks Canada hasn't taken Arctic security seriously for a long time. But first, it was another wild day for investors. There was a huge rebound yesterday after the U.S. president announced a 90-day tariff reprieve for a number of countries. Today, those gains were wiped out. Stocks fell again. Uncertainty rules, in part because Donald Trump put an even higher tariff on Chinese products. The White House confirmed the U.S. will charge 145% tax on all Chinese imports.
Well, we'll see what happens with China. We would love to be able to work a deal. They've really taken advantage of our country for a long period of time. They've ripped us off beyond anybody.
And there are questions about whether the sequence of events when Trump did his tariff reversal yesterday were intentional. Jackson Prosco explains.
As Wall Street soared on Wednesday's tariff pause, the markets gained nearly $5 trillion in just a few hours. In the Oval Office, President Donald Trump bragged to CEOs about their big payday.
He made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million.
The question of who else got rich quick now hangs over the White House, because Trump announced the tariff reprieve just hours after he posted on social media, "This is a great time to buy."
We've never had a president in recent memory, if ever, make recommendations to buy or sell stock, particularly right before major announcements from the White House.
Who was trading, who made money, who knew what and when they knew it.
On Capitol Hill, there are calls for an investigation into stock trades made by Trump, his family, and friends. Some members of Congress want to probe the trades of their fellow lawmakers, too.
Anybody who traded in the last 48 hours and made an incredible amount of money prior to this tariff announcement, who sits right there in that house, needs to answer for it.
Pressed on the allegations, the Trump administration denies any wrongdoing.
Every day is a good day to buy if you believe in the future of America.
With volatile markets and a global trade war hanging on the president's every word, there's no question the opportunity exists for anyone with inside knowledge to cash in big.
First thing that the president should do is instruct everybody in the White House not to buy or sell any stocks until this trade negotiation is finished.
So far, no sign of any such guidance from the White House. As the market roller coaster continues, so do the questions about who stands to profit from the uncertainty. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Canadian investors are affected by all this uncertainty, too. Liberal leader Mark Carney says he will pause campaigning for a third time to go back to Ottawa. As Prime Minister, he will convene a meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Canada-U.S. Relations and National Security. As Liberal leader today, Carney unveiled his crime and public safety platform. The Conservative leader focused on housing and cost of living. Mackenzie Gray will have more on that in just a moment. But first, David Akin, who is with the Liberal campaign for an announcement that many say could have been pulled from the Tory playbook. David.
Well, you know, Dawna, for the last several elections of recent memory, Liberal leaders have always tried to wedge their Conservative opponent by promising more gun control. Mark Carney is no different.
Well, criminals are trying to illegally import guns to Canada. Pierre Poilievre is trying to import irresponsible American-style gun laws into our country. You can't be serious about being tough on crime if you're not willing to be tough on guns.
Carney is promising to automatically revoke gun licenses for violent offenders, to strengthen firearms licensing. He says he'll hire 1,000 more RCMP officers, and he'll provide more training and technology to intercept illegal guns at the border. But this Liberal campaign goes much further.
Jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders.
Jail, not bail is a favorite Pierre Poilievre slogan, but the Liberals might be chanting it too. Liberals will reverse the burden of proof for bail for those accused of stealing cars, home invasions, human trafficking, and that means those people will have to prove they are not a threat to public safety rather than forcing a prosecutor to prove that they are. Carney also promised tougher sentencing guidelines for those convicted of sexual assault and for child luring.
When you look at some of the other announcements this week that rely on sort of imported American buzzwords like 3 strikes you're out, Mr. Carney's announcement is not that.
Repeat offenders will also get more jail time.
And one more point to the Liberal tough on crime package, Liberals will make it a new crime to obstruct anyone going into a place of worship or threaten or intimidate worshipers.
I'm Mackenzie Gray covering the Conservative campaign, where after years of attacking municipalities and calling mayors gatekeepers, Pierre Poilievre is trying to soften his image and saying he'll work with cities to cut development charges by $50,000.
We need a new Conservative government to put home buyers first.
While Poilievre normally focuses on housing and cost of living issues, he started Thursday by attacking Mark Carney over tariffs.
There are more tariffs, American tariffs, on Canada today than there were when Prime Minister Carney took office, while dozens of other countries have secured pauses.
Carney's focus on Trump labeled as a distraction by Poilievre.
Prime Minister Carney boasted that he had had a productive call with President Trump and that he had made, quote, progress. What progress?
The progress Carney referred to not having reciprocal tariffs applied, but with those first-round tariffs and steel and aluminum tariffs in place, the issue has seen progressive voters flock to the Liberals, who are now in majority territory. But these Conservative supporters don't believe the polls. Getting a hug from Poilievre and conducting their own survey outside the Conservative rally in Brampton on Wednesday night.
We do not believe the polls!
Asked if he believes the polls, Poilievre ducked the question, Dawna, but there were no poll skeptics with the Conservatives back in January. When Poilievre had a 20-point lead, that's now vanished.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray, thank you. Whitehorse, capital of Yukon, is the largest city in Canada's north. Coming up, Yukon's premier tells me why the rest of Canada can no longer afford to overlook the Arctic. We're back from Whitehorse in a moment. Welcome back to Whitehorse. There's been a deadly helicopter crash in New York City. It went down in the Hudson River off Manhattan. Video posted on social media shows pieces of the helicopter falling into the river. First responders say 6 people, the pilot, 2 adults and 3 children, were killed. It is too early to say what caused it to go down. Plenty of European explorers and adventurers have claimed to have conquered Canada's north. The latest is a 23-year-old British woman. Camilla Hempelman-Adams walked and skied 241 kilometers across Baffin Island in Nunavut and claimed she was the first woman to do it solo, until the Inuit set her straight. Inuit women have been doing it for thousands of years. This Inuit artist said her grandmother made similar treks while pregnant. And she said there is no way in hell a British colonizer is coming to Inuit Nunavut in 2025 and claiming any firsts. Hempelman-Adams has since apologized. Ahead, why Yukon's premier is concerned about Russian and Chinese influence in the Arctic. This is the SS Klondike, a steam-powered paddle wheeler that carried freight on the Yukon River in the 20s and 30s. It's now a National Historic Site. Canada's north has just 3 federal seats. It's not usually a place political leaders make a priority. Yukon's Premier Ranj Pillai says it's time Canadians paid more attention to the north. I spoke with him earlier and started by asking him about what voters are most concerned about.
We're thinking about cost of living. We're thinking about housing. We're thinking about challenges with healthcare. All of those are things that I think most Canadians have on their mind. But here in the Yukon, we also are thinking about investments that are long overdue for the north. The infrastructure that's required. As you know, we have a beautiful territory, but there's some really big investments, and they're not investments that are going to be just put on the backs of Yukoners.
When we talk to people around town, we've heard a lot of people kind of move very quickly to the man who's not on the ballot in this federal election campaign, and that's President Trump.
Yeah, the conversation about critical minerals, the conversation about the Arctic, I think it's all really put into sharp focus the commitment that our country has to make to the north. So it's on everybody's mind.
When you hear President Trump say Canada should become the 51st state, are you afraid he's coming after critical minerals and resources in the north and access to shipping lanes?
Are we going to see something, an aggressive move into our sovereign country? Maybe not, but I think we have to be aware that there is a real appetite for what's in the north, and it's something that Canada as a country needs to take into consideration.
You said that Arctic security must become a top priority rather than just an afterthought in Canada.
Why has it been an afterthought?
I believe it's been an afterthought because we've seen decisions made in Ottawa on short cycles. 2 to 3, 4-year planning to build projects and to build strong infrastructure for Arctic security takes much longer. I think when you only have 3 MPs representing the entire North, it's more politically acceptable to put investments into areas where you have many more MPs that are forcing those decisions.
It's not been seen as a political winner to invest heavily in Arctic security, right?
It seems that everybody else around the world understands how important it is, but we need to understand how important it is as a country.
And if we don't invest more heavily in Arctic security, what is the risk?
Well, we've seen the risks already. If you flow down this river, inevitably you come out to the Pacific, you come out to the Bering. There's lots of activity that's happening, and it's from countries that are maybe not as friendly as some of our allies.
It's from Russia and China.
Yeah, it's Russia and China, and we've seen other activity that's happened, and we're going to continue to see other countries that have interest. We're going to see in 25 years, as we see the sea ice start to change, these are going to become significant routes for shipping. But 25 years, when you're looking at planning, building, all the work that has to be done, we're behind already. So, we have to see that ambition.
Let me ask you about resource projects. That's another issue in the North that you believe needs to be escalated, right?
Yeah.
And streamlining the process so that resource projects can be built faster.
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
Look, I think we want to see hard timelines. We want to see a process that has a lot of common sense in it. There's always got to be consultation. We also always need to have First Nations at the table, understanding what their thoughts are about the projects that are in place and what the impacts will be. Here we've got 27 of the 31 critical minerals identified that the whole world wants. From the EU alone, from our Nordic friends, so many countries want to be in partnership with Canada, and especially around critical minerals.
There are people, Premier, who think that Canada is sort of in the midst of facing an existential threat from the United States. Yeah. Is that how you feel?
I think we have to have our eyes wide open, and we need to understand going forward that this is an opportunity for us to wake up as a country and to rise to the occasion. And that means new markets, build in Canada, build this country, come together, and not be just leaning on our friends across the border, but to know that we can stand on our own and we'll be fine. But it's going to take a credible amount of hard work.
Premier, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You can listen to my extended interview with Yukon's Premier, including what he said about his meeting with Donald Trump Jr. That's on the Global National Podcast. Vital Connection next. We visit an Alaskan border community desperate to keep its strong ties with Canada. This is the McBride Museum in Whitehorse. It's built around the original government telegraph office. The museum has kindly allowed us to broadcast from here today. In a place where the land is vast and the population sparse, it's important to be good neighbors, and few understand that better than people in Yukon and Alaska. America's 49th state, Alaska is an outlier perched on the northwestern tip of North America. Its only land border, 2,500 kilometers long, is with Yukon and BC. Alaska's capital, Juneau, is almost encircled by Canada, and the only road to the town of Skagway is from Whitehorse, one of many vital connections to Canada Alaskans don't want to lose. Nestled at the top of the Inside Passage on the Alaskan Panhandle, Skagway is a Pacific Coast paradise. For generations, the Tlingit people have lived here until the gold rush opened Skagway to the world, and prospectors came through here in search of Yukon gold. Quiet in the winter, in summer it bustles, packed with tourists from cruise ships. To this day, there is only one road out, and it leads to Whitehorse in Canada.
I forget that it's a whole different country because it's just right there.
Deb Potter is vice mayor of Skagway and runs the bar at the Red Onion Saloon, a fixture in town since 1897.
I've got friends in Whitehorse that are angry, and I can't blame them.
This is what democracy looks like.
The Canadian flag was front and center at this hands-off march in Skagway. Alaskans are pushing back at President Trump's policies and talk of making Canada the 51st state, fearful of losing friendships and business.
Canada is literally an economic lifeline to Alaska.
This Republican senator from Alaska is risking the wrath of President Trump. He has introduced a resolution reinforcing Canada's sovereignty.
An unqualified affirmation of the strong bonds of friendship, shared history, mutual defense, and support that have bound our state to Canada over centuries.
It's partly economics. More than 20,000 Alaskans have jobs directly connected to Canadian trade, but it goes deeper than that.
Relationships matter and are far more important than maybe the almighty dollar at times.
I love Canada.
Orion Hansen is a builder in Skagway and a local politician.
I really feel it's very disrespectful what our administration has been saying about being the 51st state.
He relies on products from Whitehorse for every house he builds. These windows are made in Whitehorse. U.S. tariffs on Canadian products will make his costs go up too. Hansen feels so strongly, he went to Alaska's capital to support that resolution.
Last year, Skagway welcomed 1.2 million cruise ship tourists. Nearly half of those tourists originated their cruise in Vancouver.
You flew to Juneau to be there in person.
I did, and I paid for it, yeah.
And you paid for it yourself?
Yes.
So is this something you really deeply feel in your heart is just so important?
Absolutely. I feel threatened too. I feel threatened for my livelihood, for our town's livelihood. So this window is looking directly north and looking at peaks that are in Canada.
He, like many Alaskans, fears what lies ahead if bonds forged over decades are slowly torn apart. That is Global National for this Thursday from Whitehorse, a beautiful place. Thanks for having us and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.